Ready? Hi, and welcome to another episode of Exit Rich, where we're live here on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So welcome. Give us your comments. Please interact with us. Give us your comments. My assistant forgot to shut the door. So we're live here. Like I said, we're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Interact with us. This is an interactive podcast. We want your comments. We want your questions. So welcome to another episode of Exit Rich, and welcome to my special guest, Mitchell, which I love the name Mitchell. You know, a lot of my friends call me Mitch. Most people don't know that. My husband has always called me Mitch. So welcome to the show, Mitchell Levy. We're going to, so Mitchell Levy, that's okay. Everybody slaughters my name. Everybody says Sealer instead of Siler. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mitchell. Mitchell's a keynote speaker, and I'm very jealous of this because he's a 2 times TEDx talk. So he's done TEDx twice. And I am just now working on my first one. He's a talk show guest, global credibility expert. He's a speaker, an international best-selling author. Now, are you ready for this? When I say best-selling author of 60 books. 60. That's huge. And an executive coach at Marshall Goldsmith, 100 coaches. After interviewing 500 thought leaders on credibility, he published a 7-country international best-selling book. So a lot of you are like, gosh, I'm just trying to write one book. How do you write 60? And then he's also an accomplished entrepreneur who has created 20 businesses, 20 businesses in Silicon Valley, including 4 publishing companies that have published over 750 books. He's provided strategic consulting to hundreds of companies and has been the chairman of a board. Now, he's not telling us what company, but has been the chairman of a board of a NASDAQ listed company. Mitchell has been happily married. Here's his biggest accomplishment, y'all. Happily married for 33 years. Now, I don't know, Mitchell, do you have kids?
Yeah, I've got one. He's 24. And if I'm using Silicon Valley parlance, he is successfully launched.
So welcome to the show, Mitchell.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
So you are the credibility expert, that's huge. So, and I love, when you had me on your podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have you on my podcast because there's so, unfortunately, I love entrepreneurship. I love business owners, and I'm always looking for vendors, suppliers, marketing people, good copywriters, etc. And there's always some snake in the grass. Especially sometimes, a lot of times I go to these different speaking events, masterminds, such things, I'll hire those people, and those people many times are the snakes in the grass. So the credibility expert is so imperative for me and business owners in order for them to know what to look for when they're dealing with vendors, when they're looking for suppliers, when they're looking for partners, when they're looking for clients. So that's why I'm so excited to have you on the show. But before we dive into all the meat and potatoes and all the good stuff, why don't we start with, who is Mitchell? What were you like as a little boy? Were you credible then?
Yeah. No, one of the things I found in studying people's purposes in life is oftentimes the person we were when we were youth and we overcame it turns out to be the superpower that we show up with today.
Right.
So my parents divorced when I was 9. And I think that's the first time, and looking back, that's the first time this word integrity was coming to mind, because for a long time I called him bio dad. Now he's forgiven. I just call him dad. So my physical father, he'd come and try to do dad stuff on weekends, but it didn't feel right. I didn't feel the love. I didn't feel the energy. My questioning is, what's a father supposed to be? What's the father's supposed to. And for a period of time there, I got really angry.
Mm.
Right. And so I think by the way, there are two big male figures in my life that were negative, one male figure that was super positive. Right. So the first bio dad was sort of a negative. And then my first mentor out of college was hedonistic, narcissistic, and taught me so many bad rules. So I had to go through most of life unlearning stuff that I learned as youth. The savior, his mom was always amazing. And besides smothering us with love, the thing that mom did, which was spectacular, was to look us in the eyes and say, you can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want to be.
Mm.
And that feeling that we weren't confined somewhere and we could figure out what our love was and what we want to do, that was powerful.
Mm. So, I think that was some great points to unpack there, especially, when you had to undo what your father did and your fathers, you had to go back and undo all that, right? And I think so many people can relate to that because think about it. I mean, we're a product of our environment. And we make unconscious decisions every second based upon our childhood experiences. And is also, that's also associated around our relationship with money and how we think about money, how we think about business, how we think about serving others, credibility, etc. So I think, that's important. How do you undo? How do you go back and unlearn all of those lessons? I mean, I have a lot childhood trauma that I, have to unlearn. And that's why I'm trying to raise my daughter, somewhat trauma free. So how do you go back and unlearn all of that?
Well, by the way, I do agree. One of the best things I did as a manager in life was to actually raise a child, right? To when you learn the lessons from really a clean slate, someone you bring into the earth, into this world, and then you share, you start looking at, well, what do you want that is different than what you had? What do you want to deliver? Clearly, the thing that my mom gave me was, hey, listen, Duncan is his name. Duncan, you can do whatever you want, right? You can make stuff happen. How do you unlearn? It depends on how deep. Right. I'm going to say it. I know a lot of different coaches in a number of different areas. Mm-hmm. Some people would say hypnotherapist. And I know a couple of different hypnotherapists I actually love and adore. Some people would say time and recognition and knowledge. So I'll give you the last lesson. So I like saying this because so the male mentor I had out of college, this is out of B school, hedonistic, narcissistic. I was physically with him for a year. He was virtually with me for 36. 36 years. Now, here's the interesting part. I did not know that. I thought I got rid of him. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but I thought he sort of exited my mind when I first left corporate. So this is 13 years. Mm-hmm. But then I did my first TEDx. So by the way, TEDx's are a great way to really unpack yourself because you've got to look at the world differently. So when I did my first TEDx, that's when I realized that there was a lot of stuff I needed to unlearn, unpack. It was, Michelle, it was my second TEDx. All right. So the second TEDx was the 28th most popular in 2021. It's called We Are Losing Our Humanity, and I'm tired of watching it happen. Mm-hmm. And because I did it during COVID, I couldn't actually practice in front of live audiences. So I had 30 of these.
Dead audience.
Yeah, well, I would say not a dead audience, but I had 30 of these. Yeah. I had 30 Zoom room meetings where I'd invite someone to say, hey, do you mind if I practice? And by the way, these are magic words. I'm going to tell you, magic words. When I did my first TEDx, this is pre-COVID, I was going to, in a 2-month period, I went to probably 10 to 15 events, And every organizer of the event I'd go to, I would say, I just been accepted to do a TEDx talk. Can I practice? And every place I went, they put me on stage.
So
Right?
how did that help you unwind and unlearn the past?
I was going to get there. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for bringing me back. So what on the second TEDx, the 10th of my 30 reviewers, my 10th reviewer said something. And this was regarding people being, to me, the opposite of credible is dubious. And he goes, Mitchell, do you realize that the people who are dubious, they're not there on purpose. They're dubious because that's what they were taught, and those before them taught them that. So they're really innocent. And what you need to do is forgive that person, because they're not there doing it maliciously. They're there because that's what they were taught.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last lesson, the last vestige of what I was holding on to from my male mentor out of school. And that was just purely forgiveness, recognizing that he wasn't doing what he was doing because he was being specifically mean to me or malevolent to me. He was doing it because that's what he was taught. That's what
Hurt
he
people
thought.
hurt people. That's the easiest way to remember that is hurt people hurt people. And usually, I said an apple doesn't fall from the tree, and we're a pattern of our, product of our environment. That's why you got to break the cycle.
So I think the answer to the question, that was one example, but how do you unlearn? You have to recognize that as you're talking to people, and I typically have between 40 to 60 meetings a week. I just love talking to people. So as I'm talking to people, I'm here to learn.
That's a lot of meetings.
It's a lot of meetings. I am one of the components of being credible is being coachable.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes I go into meetings and I don't know or don't have an agenda. Sometimes I go into a meeting and somebody has an agenda and they want to share, and sometimes that agenda happens, sometimes it doesn't. But there are times I go into meetings where somebody's doing something so amazing. I'm like, tell me more about that. And as I'm learning and growing, I'm like, that's interesting. How does that apply to me? And the same with others. Many times when I'm meetings with others and I'm sharing, I'm in order for somebody to articulate their purpose, Michelle, they actually have to throw away the marketing cookie cutter stuff.
Yeah.
And so when I'm, as an executive coach, when I'm working with people, a lot of times they don't know their purpose because they have a different expectation in their mind of what is success and who they are. And so what has to happen is we unravel to the core of who the human really is. And sometimes it's relatively easy. Many times it's relatively easy. And then sometimes it's really hard. And so the really hard is, by the way, I have coaches I recommend for that as well.
Well, and I want to dive into that. I want to talk about the credibility path and, all the different levels of that. But before we do, I just want my listeners to get to know you a little bit more. Tell me about these companies. You had 20 different companies in Silicon Valley, and you have credibility. It sounds like an oxymoron almost.
Say what you just said so I could understand it. I heard the 20 companies, but I didn't hear the credibility oxymoron.
20 companies, and I'm not saying that people in Silicon Valley is not credible, because I'm sure they are. But yeah, I was just saying you started 20 companies in Silicon Valley, and you're the credibility expert. So just tell us about some of those companies. And, did you ever feel like you were in a company or going down the wrong path where you just weren't credible? You were, drinking your own Kool-Aid, you weren't walking down the path. Talk to us a little bit about the 20 companies, just give us high level about the companies you did own in Silicon Valley. And did you ever feel like you were going down a wrong path based upon, the lessons you learned that you were working on unlearning?
Okay, that's about 4 or 5 different questions in there. So let me see if
Yeah,
I can answer
like
one
after that. So let's just.
Yeah, I'll answer 1 or 2, and then you'll take me in a certain path, right? So of those 20 companies, many of them were actually, all of them were primarily professional service type companies, right? So what and only one of them I actually sold, right? So typically what happens, Michelle, I find somebody who I really enjoy, or find a company that I really like, and we look at each other and we go, man, it'd be fun to work together. It'd be fun to play together.
Yeah.
Right. And then we go, okay, let's pick up the first client. I mean, we may just have a handshake deal. Let's pick up the first client. Let's see how it works together. And at the end of that first client engagement, we go, man, that was fun. Let's do it again. Because for me, what I care about is that the person in the room treats the client in the way I would when I'm not in the room.
Mhm.
Only once have I made a mistake of character.
So are you saying you grab somebody you think it would be fun to go into business with, and then you start a business with this person?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how do you know you're picking the right person? Because a lot of partnerships end up in disaster. And a lot of times friends go into business with each other, even family. And many times it ends up in a train wreck. So how do you know you're getting the right partner? How do you know and have you ever, chosen the wrong partner?
Oh, yes.
Of
So,
course you have.
of course, by definition. Now, let me say that I call myself a parallel entrepreneur, not a serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
Right. So a parallel entrepreneur is someone who has multiple businesses going at the same time. That's much more prevalent today than it was when I started doing it.
Yeah. I'm a
And
parallel.
so when I was running an executive business program, I created 4 different executive business programs at Silicon Valley universities. Each one of those is a separate company. They have a start, they have a length, they have a time to actually exit. And so different partners, because there were 2 different universities there, then I ran 4 conferences for one of the major conference companies during the dot-com days. Different company. Each one of those is sort of a separate, running a conference company or running a conference to me is a whole lot like creating a movie, right? When you create a movie, you're creating a separate company. You do the movie, the movie makes it or doesn't make it. The company starts, runs, executes, potentially pays dividends, and then you move on to the next movie. So to me, that's the way I look at companies. So when you're interacting with a partner, the interesting part, so you pick a partner, is having a clear understanding of where the boundaries are.
Well, how do you
Okay,
pick
this-
a partner to begin with? You're not going to matchmaker or something like that. So how do you pick a partner to begin with?
Well, there's something that's kind of cool about interacting with 40 to 60 people a week,
Yeah, that's true.
right?
Wow.
When I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility. So this is when between 2019 and 2020, I made a bunch of relationships. There are a couple people that I really work with on a continuous basis. And there's one person in particular that we're doing stuff together right now. I've got something called the Ultimate Credibility Boot Camp. And it's a guy by the name of Lucas Root. Lucas was actually one of those guys that the first time we worked together, I couldn't cut through the marketing cookie cutter stuff, right?
Yeah.
So he came back a couple of months later. And because he came back a couple of months later and there was such marked improvement, I'm like, great, this is something interesting. We just started talking to each other, right? So I have a couple people that I have continuous weekly meetings with because we enjoy each other's company. And then every now and then we are like, it seems like we should do a business for that. And then we'll break off and do a business relationship. So it's sometimes, Michelle, it's obvious when you meet with somebody. A great example, if you take a look at my screen, right? And what you see there, this is somebody who we've been talking about playing together for a while. He almost joined one of our masterminds and then elected not to. And we've been talking back and forth. And then one day he goes, Mitchell, I want to make it so that you look different. I want to make it so that you look. So, if you take a look, I now add my bottom third to the bottom. It's at a push button, right? I'm going to take that away. I've got a border around it. When I want to show slides, I can actually show slides. And it's a level above from a credibility perspective. This is somebody who we've been talking for a little over a year, and we actually don't have a physical business, but I'm going to be pushing his business because he's helped me to show up better. And I want other people who want to show up in this way. I want to recommend him because he's a good producer. And so the show you're on, Leaders Living Their Values, the next episode I have, he's going to be a producer on the show. So we're going to run probably 3 to 6 months of shows together, and we're going to make a decision. Hey, do we want to continue? Was it valuable to both of us? Was it fun?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I always talk. So I want to move through because I got so many questions to get to, but I always say it's really important to kind of test it out.
You got to test drive. You got to test
all
drive.
These 20 partnerships, did you have any that failed?
Yeah. Nothing as dramatic as what other people have. Okay. I think I've had one person that when I was not in the room, his ability to talk to our joint client was exactly the opposite of what I would have said. We did not go to the next step. There
have like a little test run before you solidify that partnership.
So that was the test. I would say with some of the larger academic institutions, the decision-making process, they work themselves out of the relationship, right? Because their decision-making process was academic, not real world. Yeah. And so in actually both universities, they ended up working themselves to the point where it didn't make sense to have a business anymore. So I closed both because of that.
Yeah, and I believe in those test periods. I believe in them for employees, of course, and I believe in them for, partnerships, just to make sure that you have the right fit, because everybody sounds good on paper. Everybody can tell a good story, but how well do they share your values? How much are they going to deliver? I found that a lot of people overpromise and deliver.
Here's the best way to think about it. For me personally, find somebody I like. Let's create a client partner. Let's find a client. Like, the business is real when money's coming in the door. Let's do something together. Sometime during that experience, shit's going to hit the fan. Yeah. When that happens, how does the person you're working with deal under pressure? How do they deal with your clients? If you like that and you think you can get the next client, then you can put the contracts together. At least that's the way I look at it.
So how come you've only exited 1 out of 20? How come you didn't sell all these companies?
As professional services companies focused on, so for instance, when I'm focused on aspects of e-commerce, they were relevant for the trend in which e-commerce existed in that particular thing. So I could have
sustainable businesses for the most.
I'd never create. Yes. So thank you. I never created it was only one of my book publishing companies that we actually sold that particular brand to a third party.
Gotcha. Okay. So you've interviewed, let's move on. You've interviewed 500 different people. That's a lot of people. So 500 different leaders on credibility. Number one, how long did that take? Number two, what was the outcome? What was the big takeaway from that?
Oh, it's huge. So it took about a year. Mm-hmm. So one of the superpowers I had was to build systems. So while I was still running the book publishing companies, and so imagine, by the way, you work with me and I go into a team meeting and I go, all right, guys, I have an idea. We're going to interview 500 people in the next year. We're not going to increase staff, and we're going to keep doing our existing publishing company. Like the surprised, shocked looks on everyone's face. I'm like, all right, don't worry about it. Let me help you with the first 10. So what I do is I put a process in place and then let the team execute.
Okay.
And so it took a year.
You personally interviewed all 500.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've actually, at this stage, it's now 670. And this thing called a CPOP we'll get to. I've done this over 1,000 times. But I personally interviewed 500 people to come up with the book, Credibility Nation.
Yeah.
To be able to, I did it. The second TEDx was a result of that. And it was the 28th most popular in 2021. So
on Amazon, right? On Amazon.
On the book itself. Yeah. The book is on, it's in Amazon and bookstores.
I got the Amazon bestsellers book, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what was the biggest outcome? What was the biggest takeaway of interviewing 500 people on credibility?
What is the biggest? I'm going to pick just one. How much we've been taught, which is the opposite of credible. How much we've been taught, which is dubious. And where that ultimately resides is 98% of those people I spoke with could not articulate who they served and how they served them in 10 words or less. 98% could not articulate their purpose.
I think you asked me that question. Did you ask me that question on my interview?
I did, because so for me, the way I articulate my purpose in 8 words is leaders living their values and making a difference. And so the podcast you were on with me is focused on leaders living their values. So as I'm asking you about your values and how you're living them, I'm formulating who you are and how you would show up and articulate yourself, right?
Okay, cool. All right, so that was the biggest takeaway. And how could you tell when you're interviewing all 500 people, or maybe you did your due diligence beforehand, but how could you tell that all of them were actually credible? Because a lot of people who are not credible say they are, of course. It's like, trust me, I'm credible. So
well, they weren't.
Great, yeah.
Right, they weren't, right? So
but out of the 500, did you determine some of those were not credible while you were doing the interview?
Well, let's define here. Let me share one of my I want to share one of my screens.
We can't. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So can I share this? So
we're live. I don't know if people can see it very well, but go ahead.
All right. So credibility is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. And what's interesting is when I was doing the interviews, I did not know at all who I didn't know really the questions to pay attention to. Right. So what I'll say, Michelle, is that for the first 5 or 10, I was figuring this out. I encourage people to come at a very specific point in time and actually to come to the green room 10 minutes early. It turns out that, now this is crazy, as you're doing a live show, you notice I came early, not super early. I think I came 7 minutes.
We requested you did too, so.
Yeah, so I came 7 minutes early, which to me is on time. Early is if I came 10 or 15 minutes early, that's early. Coming late is if I come within 3 minutes of the official start time, I'm actually late.
Yeah.
Michelle, 23% of people came late to this interview I had. And that, okay, let's make it worse. 4% of people came after the start time. 4%. Right. So
that doesn't surprise me. Their paradigm has them running late instead of running early.
Well, so I didn't know that. Right. I wasn't, when I first started the interviews, I didn't realize I needed to keep track of whether or not people would come on time or not. I didn't know if I needed.
It's just a teeny tiny simple indicator of credibility, isn't it?
It's
a pet peeve when people are late.
Of the 10 values of credibility, that's the one that falls under likability, and that's respect.
Yeah.
Do you have the respect to show up on time? On time doesn't mean at the top of the hour. On time, particularly if you're doing a live show, is at least 5 minutes early, if not before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I have people who are always late at my office in my life. It drives me crazy. So that's 1 of 10. Just rattle off the other 9 credibility factors, please.
Well, we'll start with likability.
Okay.
This is really cool. You want to be likable? There are 2 things you could do that is very simple on the likability side. Here, we'll go back and we'll put the slides back up. The 2 things you could do to be likable is you can share your stage and show respect. On share your stage, there's a word I came up with called cred dust. Cred dust is that magic that happens when you share somebody else's ideas, thoughts, and actions. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say share your stage and so spread other people's cred dust. And also respect is simply coming early, coming prepared, coming with your heart. Michelle, I'm going to say when I was doing the interviews, 50% of the people walked in the room without showing me their heart. They came with their marketing cookie cutter answers. I'm like, so I kept them in the green room a little bit longer so I could open them up so we could have a really good conversation. Because if we're talking about credibility and the end goal, I ended up creating a product that I now sell. And the product is being able to have I call it a cred reel, being able to have a video that's 5 minutes or less, where people can actually trust, know, love you in that 5-minute period. And to be able to do that, you got to be you. You can't be a marketing cookie cutter version of you, right? So that's under being likable. Under being trustworthy, we understand authenticity, integrity, vulnerability. Now, one of the things, if you could actually read the screen, integrity is listed twice. It's the only value that's listed twice of the 10 values. Because under being trustworthy, it's your external integrity. Under being known, and I'll come back to this, under being known, it's your internal integrity. So the last value in the trustworthy piece is being coachable, right? It's being open to learning, open to growing. If you're not coachable, so many people who are experts, they were taught that they're the top of the line and they know everything. CEOs, many CEOs, I know more than everyone else, but guess what? You don't. Right. And being coachable, learning from others is a really important element of being credible. And that's
it's my number one factor when I make it, it's my determining factor when I decide if I want to partner with a business owner or business owners or not, are they coachable? I mean, I've got a few business owners that if they were coachable, we would grow so much faster than what we have done. But you gotta be coachable, and so many of them are not. I always say you never grow the business beyond what you can grow the owner.
It's kind of simple. It's simple, but we don't pay attention. We weren't taught this. I mean, in school.
No, and it's simple, but they're not doing that because of their own childhood baggage, because of their own issues. People need to check their bags at the door and keep them there. They need to send their bags on no return trip.
So right. under the auspices of being known, what I'm talking about here is not that I know of you, it's that I actually know you, right? That I understand you're a servant leader, that I know that you have the intent and commitment to do the right thing. And this is why integrity is twice. It's not the external integrity you show the world, it's the internal integrity you have with yourself. Like, do you cheat on your diet? Do you cheat on your taxes? Do you cheat on your spouse? If you're doing that, that will stem over into everything else. It's hard to trust you, right? If as I'm getting to know you, you don't have integrity with yourself, it's hard to recognize that you're going to have integrity outside. And so that's, that is one of those mistakes that many politicians make, right? They have this beautiful, unblemished external integrity, but internally they're a mess, and eventually it comes out.
Yeah, 1000%. I agree with that. Okay, so you interviewed 500 people. Let's see. Well, my big thing was, because you've got to have some case stories here. What's the best case story? What's the worst case story that you've ever come in contact with?
Give me an example of
interview.
Yeah, tell me what your
people you've experienced yourself working for your vendors or suppliers. What's the best and worst case?
And when you're seeing that credibility wise, give me another example. Oh, sorry, grab a glass of water.
I can't, because we put it on the other side of the desk.
feel free to get up and grab a glass of water. I'll
talk. My screen falls. Yeah, so it's definitely on the other side of the desk. Anyway, I'm fine.
Michelle, give me context for that. Give me context for that question so I can answer it.
Somebody asked me, Michelle, what was one of the best, your best business transactions you've ever done? What's one of your worst? Like, one of my worst is the guy was completely out of integrity. He had none. He married his high school sweetheart when he was still married to his wife. And took a $30 million business and ran into bankruptcy court where we sold it for $1.2 million. That's my worst case study. Certainly you got a worst case study of credibility versus one that really has it, one that says they have it, but they don't. So, and I can lots of case studies on credibility. I ran into.
I got it. We'll do the, I think the worst case, I'll do that. That's easy. And the best case continually grows. So worst case, it was actually doing the interviews. It was a $35,000 a day keynote speaker who, when I asked him the first question, it's what is your CPOP? What is your customer point of possibilities? And what happened when people would sign up for the interviews, they'd get a 16-minute video on how to prepare, because the end result was asking 5 questions to be answered in 5 minutes. I mean, very structured approach. And the real benefit was in the green room, learning more about people and how they showed up. So I said, what is your CPOP? And normally people respond in 1 to 3 seconds, and his was 30 seconds long. He used his elevator pitch. He clearly, by the way, showed me no respect because he didn't watch the video ahead of time, right? He did not prepare, because he's a public speaker making $35,000 an event. So why would I need to prepare for any speech, right? And so then I said, you could shorten it down by focusing on, just who you serve and what either pain point or pleasure point you deliver. And he got it down to 15 seconds. And then I said something that was really, turned out his answer shocked me. I said, do you mind if I do a little bit of coaching? Because we're at that stage that I wanted to take the 15 seconds down to 2. His response is, yes, I do. He says, I have my way of doing things and you have yours, and I don't want to learn yours. By the way, just for everyone watching, that's the point when I realized that coachability is one of the elements of credibility. Because that person completely lost, like I sat on the board of a NASDAQ company. I couldn't imagine if the CEO wanted me to interview the chief marketing officer or the chief revenue officer, if as I was talking to them, they said, oh yeah, I know exactly what to do, and I don't want to learn from anyone else. I don't want to learn from the customers. I don't want to learn from the CEO. I don't want to learn from the people working for me. I know the answer. That person wouldn't get hired. So why would I hire somebody to speak to a group of people from stage if they're not coachable? That was by far.
And how much was he making as a speaker?
Oh, $35,000 keynote.
Oh, keynote. Okay. Really? Oh, I bet I know who he is.
I will not agree or deny to any
No,
name.
but I'm pretty sure I know who it is. I know a lot of speakers. I mean, I was on the speaking circuit too. All right, so yeah, I know who it is.
So the best.
That's why I won't partner with someone unless they're coachable. That's why I
Right.
won't hire an employee unless they're coachable. That's why I won't work with vendors or suppliers, because nobody knows everything. I'm coachable for sure. I always say you'll never be a great leader unless you're a great follower.
Yes. Agreed.
All right, so that was your best case study.
Well, that was my, I guess that was my worst case, right? So
Do you have a best?
yeah, best
Oh.
continues.
My worst was far worse than your worst, because my guy married his high school sweetheart.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, he's still
Well, it's
married.
not
I'm like, is that even legal? He's like, yeah, it's legal. I go, where do you live? Utah? Where do you live? He's like, no, I'm living in Atlanta. I go, that's not legal in Atlanta. So,
That doesn't work. That doesn't work for me either. Best continues to change and grow. As I keep learning, as I keep growing, I'd say at the moment, what was interesting, one of the best I already mentioned sort of is the guy by the name of Lucas Root. He came back for the second interview. We're now partnering together on one of the companies that we're actually deploying, right? The Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp. I do this now with Lucas Root. We're doing another podcast together. We're doing different things together because we like each other.
can you really teach? I'm sorry, go ahead. This is a big question though. Can you really teach credibility? Because I always thought they either have it or they don't. There's I don't know if I want to use the word world renowned speaker for Canada. There's a speaker for Canada. When I say he lacks credibility, he lacks all credibility
So
in so many ways, and he still gets speaking gigs, which is shocking.
I'm going to say I hear your statement. And by the way, when I first started the credibility interviews, I did have a friend say to me, Mitchell, I hope you're not successful. And then he went on to say, because if you're successful, you're gonna share the models that people can copy to pretend they're credible. And the thing is, I don't think you can't in the long term pretend you're credible. You either are or you aren't.
That's what I think. Yeah.
However, and let me do the however, if we've been taught dubiously, so I'll give you the good example is coming on time, right? I was one of those people until I started doing the interviews. I was one of those people. On time to me meant somewhere between either, I don't think I ever came a minute early. I'd always come exactly on the hour or maybe 2 or 3 minutes late because I had other things going on. That's how I was taught.
Yeah.
When I was doing the interviews, I learned something different. I learned that on time meant at least 3 minutes early. So I taught myself only because I was experienced that with others. If we're taught in a dubious manner that credibility means having 60 meetings a week, and that if one meeting goes late, they all go late. If that's what we're taught, that's what we're going to do. If we're taught on the other hand,
Bob Proctor calls it your paradigm.
yes. If we're taught on the other hand that every person is important and respect is coming a couple minutes early to every meeting, and that is what credibility means. That is what being credible really means, is having the respect and the integrity to make a meeting and come on time. That's teachable. If we haven't been taught that, then that's teachable.
Yeah, changing your paradigm, as Bob Proctor talks about, is very teachable, in his thinking in the results program. But, I've seen so many people that are not credible. And I just don't know if that's something that can be taught, and I think giving your lessons, I agree with you. It's kind of like I always say when somebody, 48 hours today, all those shows, those programs, investigation, ID, I say, oh my God, you're giving criminals a way to go out there and get away with the crime. And you're teaching all your secrets, how people be credible, even if they're not, and they're going to go duplicate that. But I don't think that that's duplicatable. I think you either have it or you don't, really.
So I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
I think we could teach people.
I think you can teach them patterns. You didn't let me finish. I think you could teach them patterns, like, show up on time, teaching them how to change their paradigms and stuff. But if somebody's really uncredible, like the speaker I'm talking about that steals money from everybody, I don't know if he can be taught credibility unless God gets a hold of him.
Oh, so I'm going to say, yes, there was some. So, okay, sorry, I should have let you finish.
Yeah, you didn't let me finish. You can't argue with me until you let me finish, Mitchell.
My apologies. Thank you.
All day long.
I did something not very credible. My apologies. Notice I did the Macaulay Culkin. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. There are people who are dubious. I call dubious the opposite of credible. There are people who are dubious, and they were taught that they need to take advantage of people, that the most important element in life is money versus anything else.
Yeah.
And now it's possible you could change your paradigm. Just being clear, if the paradigm is, because what I often do is,
you gotta identify they're a sociopath or not.
Well, that's something different. Yeah, I can't. That's something different, right?
I don't think we can change that person.
The question I would like to ask anyone in terms of me ultimately getting down to what is your purpose today is when you're sitting on your deathbed.
Yeah.
And somebody comes next to you, they're holding your hand and they say, what are you most proud of? What did you do in your life that you're most proud of? And by the way, those people who said I made 100,000 or 1 million or 1 billion, that these are people who their paradigm's not the right one. When you're on your deathbed, it's what relationships did you have? What impact did you have? How did you change the world in a way that was positive? Even if the world meant your most immediate family.
1,000%. I call that the tombstone test.
So when you do that, now you step back and you go, what's your purpose today? Right. And what I often like to do with this concept called a CPOP is to help people truly understand what is the paradigm they should be living in right now? What is that playground they're living in right now that they want to invite people to be part of their playground? And that to me is what I call the CPOP, that customer point of possibilities, is what's the playground you play in that you want other people to recommend you, and you want people to
Let's
join you.
just break it down. Jump into the CPOD you've been talking about. So let's jump into it. What is it? What does it mean?
So think of it as two parts. Now, typically your CPOP is less than 10 words. I love it when people have 4-word CPOPs. Your CPOP represents who you serve. Now, people often say, I serve the world, but the answer is no. It's be as finite as you can. Who do you serve? And the second thing is either what pain point do you address or what pleasure point do you deliver? Right. And so what often happens is if you can articulate, one of my favorite examples is a friend of mine who's a hypnotherapist. Her name's Jill Fisher. In a business to business types of conversations I have, I don't normally have the opportunity to recommend a hypnotherapist. Probably the first time I said the word hypnotherapist outside of context was earlier on the conversation today. But in the past, I wouldn't know how to recommend a Jill Fisher. When we did her CPOP, it turned out to be 4 words. Her CPOP, lost moms reclaiming themselves. Now, in that framework, I know how to recommend her in half, right? Because hypnotherapy is just a technique she uses, one of many, to help lost moms figure out how they reclaim themselves. And they could be lost for so many different reasons. And I go into that detail.
Sure.
So it turns out that if you know your purpose and wear it on your sleeve, it's so much easier to find partners. I mean, you ask me how easy or hard it is. I'm looking for leaders living their values. And if they're living their values and helping other people in particular ways, they're all a potential to be partners, collaborators, customers. I could hire them. Like, those are the people I want to play with. If they're in my playground, I want to play with them somehow.
Right.
And it changes everything. So what happens is,
and it has to be 4 words. It can be 4 or 5 words, right?
It's typically less than 10.
Mine is all business owners exit rich.
Well, do you want to do yours together, or we can create your?
No, because we got so many questions to do. So
Okay.
I don't want the audience focused on me. I want this all focused on them.
Well, what I would say if I was going to take you, because we've done an interview before together.
Yeah.
So you don't actually say the word help, because the CPOP is the playground you play in. You're not helping, you're not serving. And so what I would do is, your audience is business owners. And you could say business owners wanting to exit rich. Business owners wanting to exit rich. 6 words.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a really good CPOP for you. Because it's not saying, hey, I'm amazing at this, I'm great at that. When people say, I'm a business owner, I want to exit rich, and then you tell me more, that's when you do your normal stick.
Got you. Okay, cool. I like it. That was quick. All right. So why do you say that credibility starts with clarity? Because I know, that was, you said that to me a few times. Credibility starts with clarity. Credibility starts with clarity. So let's explain that to our listeners.
Well, I think the good news is we just had the preface to that conversation, having clarity of who you are and who you serve. Like, I can't tell you. So I've now done this CPOP exercise over 1,000 times. And I can't tell you, so many people are already marketing cookie cutter approaches. Like they say, okay, this is where I'm getting paid today, but the audience I want to serve is so much bigger. Let's have a bigger, and the thing is, you could change your CPOP over time as you grow, as you have more credibility, as you have bigger reach. Mm-hmm. But at the moment, I want to be able to recommend you. Let's think about it in a different way. Business owners wanting to exit rich. I can remember that. Yeah. When I run into somebody, and by the way, given the percentage of people in my age group who want to sell their companies, when I run into somebody who says, hey, I'm ready, 2-3 years from now, I want to get rid of my company, I can think about you, because now that we've talked about it and I've cemented it in my mind, I know the playground you play at, right? So many people, when I talk to you, imagine if in a short period of time, I know the playground you play and I know how to recommend you. So what am I going to do first? I'm going to then go and Google your name. I'm going to look at you on LinkedIn. I'm going to look at you in your social media and your web presence. And all I want to do is make sure that you reinforce who you are. You're credible. You have integrity to show up when we're talking synchronously, like we're doing now, and asynchronously, you reinforce it. If you reinforce on your website and your social your presence, business owners wanting to exit rich, if you reinforce that, I'm comfortable recommending you. Now, when people come to me and they have this CPOP, but then their website has like 5 or 6 or 20 different things they do because they can do those things, I don't recommend them.
Yeah,
Right?
that's so much for us because, we have on there about helping business owners exit rich, but then we also help buyers find the right business, right? And then we also partner with business owners. So, and we do all of those. We specialize in buying, selling, fixing. Yeah.
So when we spent time, if you want to, we could do an exercise where we spend time focused on your CPOP, and we'll come up with something that's a higher level than just that one thing we came up with. And so what's important, but notice this is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
The example is, wait, that's not me. That's limiting. I want bigger. And by the time you're done, you're sitting on top of the planet, and you're the next Elon Musk, and that most people sort of present themselves that way instead of, how do you make it easy for me to recommend you?
Yeah, and that's when I'll send you my sell side. And I always think too, when you're coming up with that CPOP, really think about who you're serving. Who are you serving? Like you said earlier, I mean, and that's what I always talk about when I help my business owners on Road to Exit Rich, is when they design their processes, they're always designing their processes around the owner's agenda. I mean, look at doctor's offices. What are their hours? Monday to Thursday, 9 to 5 or 9 to 4. My doctor is 9 to 4 and I'm closed on Fridays, and my husband and I have medical clinics, and we have evening appointments and Saturday appointments available because we took into consideration the customer experience. So it's really important to think about, what do you want that customer experience to be? And if you don't do that, you're going to lose market share, which is why so many business owners are losing market share, because whoever makes it easiest to do business with them and provides quality service and creates a wow experience is the one that's going to dominate. And Amazon dominates because they do make it so easy. You can practically buy a horse on Amazon and have it delivered in 2 days. So I always talk about, you really got to create that wow experience.
But
why do you say that we were taught wrong to lead with the value proposition?
So to first answer your question, you know what clarity is all about. So I appreciate the question. And the issue is,
I just moved right on.
if you have clarity, people see you, right? They see you for who you are. Yeah. Now, the value proposition and the 30-second pitch both have something in it that is wrong. Okay. It has the word I or we. Because when somebody says, what do you do? Here's the truth. They don't really care what you do. They care about what you could do for them. Yeah. Right. And so
what's in it for me channel? What's in it for me channel?
It's a with them. What's in it for me? Right. So if you say I or we, like they're asking you what they do because that's what they were taught, but that's not really what they're asking. They're asking what's in it for me. And so you start with I or we, and even though they ask, they may be afraid, well, they're trying to sell me something. Yeah. So that's where the CPOP comes first. Notice it didn't say helping. Helping is another form, or serving is another form of I or we, right? So what happens is, if you can actually articulate this playground you play in, which is simply who you serve as finite as you can, and either the pain point or pleasure point you deliver for them, then what they're doing is they're going. So think about this, Michelle. If somebody says to you what you do, the way I do it, by the way, is I typically would say, because if somebody doesn't know what the word CPOP means, I'll go, clients typically attracted to me. And then I'll do a pause. leaders living their values and making a difference. And so that's the playground I play in. If they don't really care about that, doesn't mean they don't care about me. I'll get those signs. But if there's someone who might want to recommend me to somebody else, or I've been in front of a mastermind where somebody raised their hand and said, wait a second, Mitchell, that's me. Tell me more, right? If they're a recommender or a potential prospect, they're going to ask you to tell you more. That's when you can go into your value proposition or your 30-second elevator pitch, because they're actually asking you, hey, this is a playground I want to recommend, or I want to join in myself. Tell me what you do to solve that problem.
Cool. All right. So y'all hear that? Don't lead with your value proposition. All right. And I always say lead with the brand promise, in the customer experience. But all right, so you looked at over 100,000 LinkedIn profiles, right? That's a lot. Let's see, interview 500 people, published 60 books, altogether 750 books, and reviewed 100,000. I guess you don't sleep. So tell me about these 100,000 LinkedIn profiles. What makes a LinkedIn profile credible, other than what you've already said about making sure it's in alignment?
By the way, that great observation, because lots of people don't even ask that question. So first of all,
most people are not.
99% of LinkedIn profiles are not in alignment, right? One, at least 98%. So maybe we'll add one less. LinkedIn profiles are treated like resumes. LinkedIn's not your resume. Think of LinkedIn as a search engine, or the LinkedIn optimized opportunity for people to find you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they find you? Well, if you know who your customers are, and you know either the pain point you're serving or the pleasure point you're serving, i.e. your CPOP, guess what? That's what they're going to be typing into the LinkedIn search engine looking for. And so if you can take your CPOP and put it into the tagline of your LinkedIn profile, and that's what they're typing in for search, guess whose profile is going to pop up when they're searching? It's yours. And then you reinforce it with videos. You reinforce it with where it's a benefit of a resume is that it actually does reinforce credibility. But it's not the resume they care about. It's if you have a CPOP, you just need to reinforce that you can do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So when you look through the jobs on my profile, when you look through the jobs and others, I actually have video testimonials. I have videos of things that we can do. I have video testimonials from others. There's a mix so that you can learn a whole lot about me asynchronously before you talk to me.
Yeah, but I think that just doesn't hold true with LinkedIn, although LinkedIn's the best place to start with entrepreneurs, but that's true on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Everything should be congruent. Yeah,
I would agree. So the thing that's fascinating is some people, some dubious teachers will say, hey, change your platform to be focused on the audience you're talking to. And the answer is yes, and. You do want to, you're going to talk to your audience different on TikTok than you're going to talk to your audience on Instagram and on Facebook. There's a different way to have engagement on all those platforms.
But your profile should be fairly consistent.
Exactly. If for instance, for me, you and I are very similar. First place I go is LinkedIn, right? Absolutely. First place to go. But Lucas, first place he goes is Instagram.
Yeah.
Different.
How old is he? He's a Gen Z, I would assume.
He's a different person, right?
And on Instagram and TikTok.
And I actually have somebody we do an ultimate credibility boot camp. There was somebody in there that 90% of her business comes from TikTok. I'm like, oh, tell us more, because we actually had her spend 10 minutes talking about how she uses TikTok to generate business. And it was fun to learn, because I'm coachable. It's fun to learn what she does and how she brings people in the room. The thing is, though, if I looked at Michelle in each one of those platforms, I want to quickly recognize you. I want to quickly recognize that no matter what platform I'm in, that I found the right person.
Right, right. That's why I say you need consistency, at least in your platform, at least in your profiles. So we're almost out of time here, Mitchell. You've dropped so many golden nuggets, words of wisdom. Was there anything I should have asked that I forgot to ask, or any words of, more golden nuggets you want to drop on our audience before we say goodbye?
So if I'm thinking about exiting rich, so this would be the audience that you're focused on. What do you need to do? You need to be able to put processes in place. You need to have opportunities where your customers are happy and those people working for you can service them, whether or not you're there or not there. You need to have teachable, formatable rules that make it easy, and you need to grow over time. One of our businesses is a book publishing company. So for those people who need books, we have a done for you book service, right? Whether or not we're the right fit for you depends on, after we have a conversation, does it feel good, right? Is the company credible? Is it one in which all your employees are the best salespeople for the company? If it's not, you could go to sales trainers, but that's what we do from the Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp. We help clients understand that if your employees don't want to be there and they're not showing up properly, it's time to let them go and find new ones, right?
I love what you just said there, because what you said is, are all of your employees the best salespeople for your company? Because a lot of times, someone will say, well, I don't do sales, or I'm not in the sales role, or that's, even in my company, oh, that's up to the brokers. And so that is so far from the truth, because everybody is selling. Your receptionist, assistant, from the minute they pick up that phone to that happy, authentic voice, greeting that client, thanking them for calling, to our analyst, providing, great analyst evaluation that's pain-free. As much as possible, going in the QuickBooks and making it easy for our clients. I mean, everybody who works for you is a salesperson, and I don't think most employers and employees recognize that. So that was a very good, wicked smart golden nugget you just dropped on us. You got any more bombs?
Very good, wicked smart golden nugget. Okay, that's a lot of words together.
It's 4 words.
I would say, if you're probably the best thing I'd think about is just recently, given where we are, there was Labor Day. Labor Day is officially this holiday where we're giving people who are laborers time off. I'm going to say, if you love what you do, work equals play, and you play all the time. If your people love what they do, work equals play, they play all the time. You don't need an official holiday to get a day off. You can take days off when you need to. And if you could create a culture and environment where people actually love what they're doing and love showing up to this thing, you can call it work or you can call it play, then you've created something that not only will your employees, your most important stakeholders care about, but your customers as stakeholders will care about, that your partners as stakeholders will care about. And if you can create that culture, that environment where it's infectious, where people just love coming and playing, that's the piece that is, to me, that's nirvana. To create a company where people just love showing up because they know the goals, they know they know their CPOPs, they know what's going on, they know how to serve, and they're enjoying serving. And they have the freedom and power to be able to do that. You do that with any company, then you have the opportunity to exit rich.
Well, if you want some good examples, Zappos is a good example of that. So is Google. And I'm not sure about Facebook, but I know Google is for sure. And Google, they have to tell people to go home. They have to make them go home because they don't want to. They get ice cream, they get to play ping pong, they get to play. They have a pool tables, they get to do all this fun stuff, but they're also creating and they're working. They're working as they're playing. So Yeah, and Zappos is really, really good about culture. So great.
I have I'll give you one last company that I like. Uh, they specifically focus on accountants and focus on lead generation for accountants. The entire company takes a week off every 2 months.
Wow.
Right? They just structure an environment where
So I know what's going to happen when this podcast is over. My people are going to come to me and say, "Well, can we start our week off every 2 months?" All right, so Mitchell, where can our listeners find you? Where can they, connect with you if they want an Amazon bestseller? Where can I connect with you to get your books, to get into some of your coaching programs or your boot camps?
I'd say I've got, like many of us, I have all these URLs going to multiple places. Is MitchellLevy.com is the website, and that'll direct you to most anywhere you want to go. If you're on LinkedIn, that's the place I play most. So connect to me on LinkedIn and go to MitchellLevy.com. And when there's many different opportunities, things that we offer. We just finished the Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp, which is amazing. And the next time we run that is December 1st and 2nd. We'd love to see you there.
And where at? Where are those held?
UltimateCredibilityBootcamp.com.
But where do you have them? Are they Zoom?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we've been doing virtual so far.
Okay.
And if there's a company that would like to bring us in, we'll custom create something for you.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Mitchell. You were a wonderful guest. So many great golden nuggets. I ask all my audience, do the credibility check, see what your credibility level is, and keep tuning in to Exit Rich. If you love this episode, which I know you did, then share it with the audience, share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers, and subscribe to the Exit Rich podcast. Until we see you next Tuesday, I hope everybody has a fabulous week, and I hope everybody makes a difference in somebody else's life.
Thanks, Michelle. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.